tuning in. This is James from Octopart. We have a very special guest here for you today from our first episode of this podcast series, William Santana Li, the CEO of Knightscope. Thanks so much for coming on the show. We appreciate you taking the time.
So I'm the guinea pig. I get to be the first dude?
Yeah, the trial run.
All right, we'll try not to screw it up.
Great. Well, I mean, thank you for coming on. You're one of the first companies that came to mind because the point of this series is to basically talk to people who you think are innovators, game changers in the tech sector. And I definitely believe that your company fits that description.
Yeah, we've been blazing a trail now for, been over 10 years, building all these crazy robots, and now we're patrolling across the country. So I appreciate you having us.
That's awesome. Just for anyone who doesn't really know your company's work, do you want to just tell them a little bit about what you specialize in, what you do in the tech sector?
Yeah, so Knightscope, we work for Big Brother. We build robots that are going to take everyone's job and kill everyone. Oh, sorry, wrong media track. So Knightscope, we build autonomous security robots and emergency communication devices to help officers and guards do their jobs much more effectively. Our long-term mission is to see if we can make the U.S. the safest country in the world. And very similar to, a soldier in a theater of war has a ton of capabilities. And unfortunately, on our own soil, we don't give the officers and guards that same level of support. So we build a bunch of crazy technologies that are a unique combination of autonomy or autonomous or self-driving technology, robotics, AI, and electric vehicle technology to all work together 24/7 out in the rain, across the country in all kinds of weather conditions, to give officers the ability to have eyes and ears on the ground and their voice in multiple locations at the same time. So it's a little bit of a complicated set of technologies, but now we have it actually working in the field, and we've been operating, I think, in the field well over 2.3 million hours.
Wow.
So we've got a lot of real-world experience.
That's awesome. And what have you sort of found? What are your findings? How effective has the rollout been?
Two different answers there. I think in terms of crime-fighting technology, when we started the company, it was like, you're out of your mind. This is never going to work. Yeah, well, go to knightscope.com/crime. And you can see the very long list of all these positive things that these robots have already done for society, and we're just getting started. I think a different way to answer your question would be for the founders or entrepreneurs listening out, everything that we worried about in a conference room or wrote down somewhere that like this bad thing's going to happen, this thing's not going to work or whatever, like almost none of that happened. And
right.
None of this, and all the stuff that no one ever talked about, no one worried about, like all that went wrong. And I think it gives us a huge competitive advantage to have that amount of experience across the entire nation, multiple time zones. We probably operated in 6, 7, 8 winters and summers. And I think we've probably forgotten more than most people would know on how to do this. So it's been an interesting journey, as some like to say.
And what sort of has been the public feedback? Like, how have people received these robots operating in their areas, I guess?
Important. There's two different answers to that.
Sure.
And it has a lot to do with manners. If you properly introduce yourself, meaning, hi, a robot is going to be here, and you tell the tenants, the faculty, the students, the residents, the employees that this robot's going to be here next week. Why don't you come join us for a lunch and learn, and we can have some robot cake, and you can do a name the robot contest, and this is what it does, and this is why it's here. Things go swimmingly well. People end up with a little bit of an emotional attachment to the robot, and things usually end up on a positive swing. We've had experience the opposite of that, where a client was like, no, we don't need to tell anybody anything. We're just going to put the robot there, and it's our property, so we'll do whatever we want. And as you can imagine, people's imaginations are rather wild. And as I often say, Hollywood has done us a service and a disservice over the last 30 years. So you can imagine what the residents might have complained about that there's this robot patrolling and, reading my mind and, spying out what my wife is watching on TV. I mean, it's like all kinds of craziness. So you have to spend the time to properly introduce the technology to the community.
Yeah, that makes definite sense. I think it's the same with a lot of technology. People are kind of resistant to change until they kind of see, oh, this change is actually beneficial to me and not scary. So
Yep.
It makes total sense. And you've been operating, obviously, you said for 10 years. So that means you operated pre and during COVID.
Well, that was fun.
How were you sort of affected by the supply chain shortage?
The supply chain stuff, it's gotten much better. I will say the last few years been horrendous. And the problem is that it's a whack-a-mole problem, at least for us. It's obvious that you might have a chip problem, but then the chip problem gets cured, then you've got a resin problem. Or this one resistor that's in the printed circuit board, they stop making. Or this company got bought by a Chinese company and you're not going to use that supplier anymore. Like all kinds of crazy stuff happens and you think you fixed everything and then the next issue shows up and sometimes completely at a left field. So I won't say it's all cured. We're still sitting on nearly a $5 million backlog of new orders that we're working through. And the good news is the sales team keep putting new stuff in and we keep trying to ship. But the supply chain issues still are with us.
I think most people are in the same boat with that one. It's one of those things that's not going to fix itself overnight, even with things getting better.
Yep.
So obviously right now the hot topic is AI and robotics. It's just kind of in the last year, it's always been around. But
I thought it was Web3 and crypto, no? Oh, we switched? Oh, wrong channel, sorry.
Yeah, not cool anymore now. Now we're not talking about that.
We'll talk about that.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of like even people who didn't care in the past are now actually discussing AI as an everyday topic. So what do you sort of see as the future in that area? Obviously, it's progressing pretty quickly. You see much changing in the next few years?
I see a dramatic change coming in the next 3, 5, 10 years. Probably the one that I'm not attached to, but I'm really excited about. I think the amount of compute capability that we can give to the bioengineering medical profession to find all kinds of new cures and disease prevention and stuff. And I think that's just going to be a fascinating movie to watch. Probably on the frustrating side for us is, I get all kinds of questions of, hey, so when's Knightscope going to use AI? And I'm like, excuse me? Because, I guess some people don't put 2 and 2 together, but you can't have a machine, level 5, patrolling autonomously indoors and outdoors, recharging itself on its own without AI. Like, right. You can't, detect and read a license plate without AI. I mean, you can't detect a person in the middle of the night without AI. It's like we've been actually doing this. So it's an actual practical application of AI as opposed to, some R&D kind of science fair project. So I think I find that humorous, frustrating, and also obviously we need to communicate a little bit better because if people are asking those kinds of questions, we got a little bit of a gap here.
I think a lot of it comes down to people not completely understanding what AI is. I think people have like sort of a concept in their head from watching TV and movies, as you said, but I think they don't realize how much on an everyday basis their lives are actually touched by it.
I mean, just go order something on Amazon. You think hey, we think you should take a look at this. Is some kid typing there? Like, hey, you think you should look at this? No. Right.
Or like Netflix, like the recommended section on Netflix.
Exactly.
It's all algorithm.
Exactly.
Altium 365 lets you hold the fastest design reviews ever. Share your designs from anywhere and with anyone with a single click. It's easy. Leave a comment tagging your teammate and they'll instantly receive an email with a link to the design. Anyone you invite can open the design using a web browser. Using the browser interface, you're able to comment, mark up, cross-probe, inspect, and more. Comments are attached directly to the project, making them viewable within Altium Designer, as well as through the browser interface. Give it a try and get started with Altium 365 today.
Well, what about robotics? I mean, you've made a huge progress yourself in that area. Do you see sort of technology, yes, AI technology allowing a rapid advancement in the robotics sector?
As I often try to coach founders and entrepreneurs, like if you ever want to figure out what's going to happen or what is happening, usually one of the biggest clues is follow the money. And in my view, it's gotten a lot better since 2013. So you can, discount my comments a little bit. But, what is it? $100-200 billion gets dumped into startups every year.
Yeah.
I probably have the ratios wrong because they've changed over time, but it's on the order of 70-80+% goes into software, 10% into biotech, 10% into other. And why do we have Amazon and eBay and Google? Is because Google was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the 13th search engine. 12 other teams with millions and millions of dollars tried beforehand and failed. And finally someone got it right. Well, we don't have that influx of massive capital being distributed in kind of the robotics field or anything kind of hardware, which is really annoying. Like you get a bunch of investors running around like hardware's hard. That's the technical equivalent of like a bunch of lawyers, made a new hospital and like, surgery's really hard. It's like, listen, you're a freaking software finance person and you no idea how a product gets developed utilizing any electromechanical anything, and then you're going to sit back there and have entrepreneurs not spend the time on something that's a little bit more difficult or out of spec. Like, since when in our country do we like work on the thing that's easy? Like, I want to go work on photo sharing apps. Like, this is infuriating. So I think part of the problem is the capital allocators. Like, sure. You got people, this is not how the world works. You don't download everything from the cloud. And so we need to encourage entrepreneurs and founders and students to really think about how the world works. Software is absolutely a huge catalyst and enabler and everything, but that's not how the whole world works, and I'm sorry. And so I think because there has been a lack of funding, I still say, 10 years later, that we're like in the 1970s equivalent of the PC industry. It's like finally getting out of the hobbyist category. There's a few companies that got funded. Some of them went public like us, but there's not a rinse and repeat massive 3 or 4, 5 humongous companies building all this stuff. It's by hook or by crook we're making progress. It'd be massively different, James, if 30, 40, 50 billion dollars was getting dumped into the sector every year. Like, it would be fascinating to see, what things look like, 5 or 10 years from now. But that's not the case. It's gotten a little bit better. Don't get me wrong, but not at the scale that people are expecting that they see on the big silver screen from Hollywood.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. People will see. I think Hollywood's definitely skewed a lot of public opinions on a lot of different tech areas, and robotics is definitely one of them. Movies like Chappie make it. People think that it's like, oh, that's coming out tomorrow, like a robot like that, any day now.
Yeah, and some big players, have tried and all failed. I think I often cite just on the autonomy side of things. Bloomberg did a study, I think earlier this year, is like over $100 billion got dumped into autonomous self-driving whatever. If I recall correctly, something like 200 companies working on it, and their collective revenue is what? Zero, like almost zero. Like, yeah. We're running at a $12 million run rate, and I get criticized from Wall Street analysts and some investors like, you're not growing fast enough. Well, first of all, we're double-digit growth. We're going to double likely the revenue from last year to this year, and the 200 dudes behind us like haven't shipped anything, and we're running level 5 fully autonomous, completely hands-off, no human intervention. So sometimes you got to put things in perspective, but that also speaks to how early we are. This is like the first inning of, I think, what's going to happen.
Well, that's exactly why I wanted you on the podcast, because you guys are really ahead of the curve with a lot of this stuff. So I just wanted to ask you as well, you had mentioned to me the second quarter 2023 financial results. I think you had some interesting information around that.
Yeah, so we try to do instead of a boring earnings call with some operator calling on two analysts from whatever, Morgan Stanley and Goldman to say something, and then one retail, we do something a little bit different, which we publish a digestible amount of information for an actual investor to understand what just happened in an easy to understand format. And then I end up holding a town hall where I've got hundreds and hundreds of people, asking me questions directly without a moderator, and to put some transparency into what we're doing and, some accountability, and for us to also be able to communicate things. So we'll look to continue to do those, but for the first half of the year, we've done pretty well, and as I said earlier, we're on a run rate to likely double the revenue from last year, and things are looking up. It's still not easy. Remember, we've got a combination of 4 really hard technologies all combined into one: autonomy, AI, electric vehicles, and robotics. So it's not easy to get all that stuff done, and we've made our share of missteps, but we continue to move forward. So things are looking up. We're still targeting. There's going to be a tall order here, but in the next 12 to 15 months, we're targeting to get to profitability. So we're on the march.
Fantastic to hear. That's great. And then the other thing I want to ask about, you had a public safety infrastructure bond offering.
Yes, the bond offering. So as part of the acquisition we made last year of Case Emergency Systems, we have now a total of well over 7,000 devices all across the country. These famous blue light towers, call boxes, emergency phones, plus all our robots. And what I want to do long term is be able to put 1 million machines in network to give the 1 million law enforcement professionals and 1.5 million security guards actual capabilities for them to do their jobs more effectively. In order to do that, we need to upgrade the existing infrastructure and continue to grow Knightscope. So one of the things that we found being public, there are some less than desirable, I'll try to be polite, less than desirable sources of financings and equity and or debt. And we thought to do something a little bit more thoughtful, to do a non-dilutive bond offering that protects our existing shareholders, gives Knightscope the capital it needs to grow, supports the public safety kind of mission, but also gives a handsome return to the investor. So if folks are interested, they can go to bond.knightscope.com, and they can get on the wait list. We're working through the regulatory process. Cross fingers, I can't control that, but hopefully during the fourth quarter here, we'll be able to go live with that and get that additional capital to be put to work on continuing on our crazy mission to see if we can make the U.S. the safest country in the world.
Awesome. Love to see it. So I guess before we wrap up, is there anything coming in the future we should keep our eyes open for? Like, what should people be looking for from the company?
Probably the 2 big things that we're pins and needles on. Earlier this year, New York City and NYPD reached out. They've got a pretty serious issue where, this is public information, so they have 34,000 officers. They're losing 3,000 to 4,000 a year, and still need to be able to secure all the New Yorkers and looking for new technologies. So the mayor and the NYPD brass hosted our crazy, I call it Robot Aquarium in Times Square. If you want to know what that looks like, go to knightscope.com/roadshow. So we had the pod there for 3 days to introduce, as I mentioned earlier, the technology, and then we signed a contract to put the first Knightscope K5 5th generation machine in Manhattan. So we're kind of itchy trigger here wanting to get that shipped out. There's a lot. I can't underscore that as the number of people involved to make this happen. But we're hopefully getting close here to shipping that machine out. And then the other big thing that we're been working on for, it's almost going to be 3 years now, getting a cybersecurity approval from the U.S. federal government. So this is going through the FedRAMP process. That also is working its way through. Crossing fingers here, we're getting close. So that will give you an authority to operate, or ATO. And our sponsor there is the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. So we're hopeful those two big things can happen here before the year is out. And plus, we got all the organic growth. Like, if you watch the announcements we make, hopefully you'll follow us on social media. We have a material announcement almost one or more every week, like clockwork. So, as I often say, the rise of the robots is happening. It's happening now. If you want an overview of Knightscope, just go to knightscope.com/rise. Then you can get a better understanding of kind of what we've been up to.
And LinkedIn, Instagram, are you on YouTube as well for updates and all that sort of stuff? Or
Yeah, Facebook, X.
Great. Yeah, basically everywhere.
Yep.
That's great. Yeah, that's how I came across you initially as well. I saw some really cool robotics stuff on social media. I was like, wow, this company is really interesting, and give them a follow.
It's funny. Some people are like, oh, cool prototype. When are you going to launch? And it's like, huh?
Well, they obviously haven't looked into the website very much.
No.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the show. It's great having you on and learning about the vast world of robotics.
All right, but if you hit 1,000 episodes, you're gonna have me back, right? So we can
100%. Yeah, we want to see what's happening. Got to stay up to date with the future of security.
You bet.